Good morning, and thank you everyone for participating in today's Caregiver Teleconnection session entitled Why Does Dementia Sometimes Cause Hallucinations, Delusions, and Paranoia? This is going to be given by Lucy Barylak, and Lucy received her master's degree in social work from McGill University and has dedicated her career to supporting caregivers. Lucy was the founder and longstanding manager of the Caregiver Support Center at the CLSC Renee Casson, a multi-service respite program for family caregivers, and oversaw transference of knowledge for programming, including caregiving, mental health, elder abuse, and palliative care. In 2003 to 2012, she received the Queen's Jubilee Award, represented by the Canadian Home Care Association, and was awarded on the basis of her dedication in developing a national coalition to support the issues and challenges facing informal caregivers. Ms. Barylak also co-edited a book on caregiving issues entitled Responding Creatively to the Needs of Caregivers, a resource for healthcare professionals, published by Edition St. Martin 2002. In 2018, she was author to a chapter in Marguerite's Place, Minister of Seniors in Quebec, and Rosette Pipor's book titled De la Proche. I am not very good with my French, so I will skip that part. She has been a key architect of screening and assessment tools for family caregivers, and she provides training for healthcare professionals across North America on the use of these tools. Lucy is also a consultant for private industry, which includes work with the Wilmette Charitable Foundation and clinics in Texas. Lucy is also a liaison supervisor at the School of Social Work at McGill University. And with that, take it away, Lucy.
That's a lot of bio there. That kind of tells you that I've been in the healthcare system for over 35 years. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. We know that caregiving is really very rewarding and challenging as well. And I can tell you on a personal level that I've been through that with caring for my mother for over 10 years, especially when the person's suffering from any form of dementia. So let's start today let's take a look at the agenda. Now, as Minerva said, you'll be able to have ask questions during the presentation. I'm going to leave a lot of time at the end. So please, if you have a piece of paper, write down your questions and we can talk about it. Many times in these presentations, caregivers give a lot of information that I don't even have, and sharing that is important. So I'm going to talk about what is dementia, just overall, just to kind of get us back to what's going on when someone has dementia. And of course, I'm going to be speaking about hallucination, delusions, and paranoia. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on Lewy body dementia because it's a little bit different than any other form. It is not Alzheimer's. I'm going to give you tips on how to handle this behavior. And I'm going to tell you that prevention is key, meaning by learning how to handle this situation, you can prevent a lot of difficult behaviors. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so what is dementia? Before I start talking about it a little bit, I want to tell everyone, and I'm sure a lot of you know this already, dementia is an umbrella of many, many diseases. So when we say dementia, the person could have Alzheimer's, they could have Lewy body, they could have vascular dementia, they could have Parkinson's as well. That's why it's so, so important to get a good diagnosis of what's happening with the person you're caring for. Just saying that they have dementia is not enough because the different diseases play out in different ways. But in general, dementia, there's a loss of cognitive functioning, thinking, remembering, and reasoning to such an extent that it really interferes with the person's daily life and activities. And that's why many of them cannot perform simple tasks that they used to do in the past. For example, even brushing their teeth. Now, some people with dementia cannot control their emotions. Okay, they can be sad, they could be angry, they just can't do it. Their personalities may change. People who have been very outgoing can become introverted and vice versa. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so dementia reduces the brain's ability to interpret and understand information. Now, I want you to, we all know that there are good days and there are bad days that people with dementia have, but some things do trigger it. So, for example, sensory issues such as poor eyesight or poor hearing can really have an effect on that person. You know, they're just not seeing, they're not hearing. So it exaggerates their condition even worse. So there's reduced or no memory of recent events at all. That's why people repeat themselves so often. They don't remember. Forgets explanations. You tell them to do something, they forget, and it can be very frustrating. Believe that things disappear. They do believe that. Does not understand certain conversations. Confused from forgetting to use a hearing aid or glasses. That's why if the person has a hearing aid and glasses, please make sure there are batteries and the glasses are clean and that they wear them during the day at all times. Now, the other causes for these triggers that happen is side effects of medication. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. People don't realize that even over-the-counter medications for pain, or if someone has a cold, can increase dementia and can increase them being more forgetful. Now, if they've had a psychiatric illness in the past, that could trigger it as well. Unfamiliar environment, and I know some of you know that. I knew that with my mom when I took her out to the shopping center. She was more confused many times, so I really had to know how to manage that. Low lighting that reduces vision. Now, it's important to keep your homes well lit because shadows can make the person very, very scared and if they don't see well. Background noise. Now, it could be quiet and everything is going well. You go on to turn the TV or the radio, and all of a sudden the person is becoming very agitated. So these are things that you need to be aware of and realize what is triggering the dementia to develop into something that is really hard to control. Next, please. Now, I receive many letters from caregivers. I wanted to share some of them with you because I'm wondering, by me reading them to you, if that sort of triggers for yourself, is it something that you're going through? So here's the first one. Dear Lucy, my parents are both in their late 80s, and Dad is caring for Mom, who has Alzheimer's for the past few years. On my last visit, Mom was very agitated and was not herself. She was pacing up and down the living room and refused to sit down on the sofa. I asked her what was the problem, and she said that the cat was sitting on the couch. My parents do not have a cat, and there certainly was no cat sitting on the couch. I tried to tell her that there is no cat, but that made her even more agitated and upset. It took a long time for her to finally go and lie down in her bedroom. What is happening to her and what should we do? And she signed it Isabel. So here's a typical way of all of a sudden this person feeling this way. Let's look at the next letter. Dear Lucy, in the last few weeks, my mother, who lives with me and my husband, has started behaving very strangely. Mom has dementia, but recently she's been talking to someone who's not there. It appears she's actually having a conversation with this invisible person. She looked very happy, smiling, and having a good time. I asked her who she's talking to, and she said, Joe, down the street. I was shocked because Mom was forgetful, but never did this before. I told her that there was no one in the house, but she got very upset with me and told me that I don't know anything. Did I say something wrong? What should I do? And here's the last letter I want to share with you. It all has to do with hallucination and delusions. Dear Lucy, my husband was diagnosed with dementia 4 years ago. I'm his main caregiver and truly love this man very much. It is becoming very difficult for me in the past few months. Michael has started to accuse me of taking money from his wallet. He has not carried any money in his wallet for many years. I tried to explain this to him, and that I never took any money, and asked him to stop accusing me. He turns his head away and stops talking to me. This has been going on almost daily, and I'm very frustrated and don't know what to do. It is becoming very difficult, and I feel so lost and not knowing where this is coming from. Yesterday, he accused me of having an affair with the neighbor next door. Thank you for listening, Mabel. Now, if we can go to the next slide, please. Could you very well imagine how these people were feeling when out of nowhere, the people that they're caring for are behaving in this manner? That's why I felt that it's so important to have a session on hallucination, delusions, and paranoia, for you to have a better understanding of what is actually going on. Now, people with dementia may experience hallucination, delusion, and paranoia. So I want you to be aware of that. It might not happen, but it could happen. Understanding the difference between these can be helpful to you, as well as the person you're caring for. Understanding why this happens and how to manage it is actually really very crucial. So let's go to the next slide and take a look at what is hallucination. Now, this is very important for you to understand. It's really a false sensory perception of objects or events. Individuals with dementia might see, hear, smell, taste, or feel something that is not there in reality. But it's very, very real to them, okay? So there's no arguing here. They see it, they hear it, they smell it. For example, could include insects crawling on them or hearing people talk and thus responding to those voices, very much like that mother did talking to Joe. Tasting things that aren't there, for example, a metallic taste in their mouth. Smelling things that aren't there, for example, smoke or perfume. I had one caregiver call me and saying, my husband thinks the house is on fire. I don't know what to do, because actually he really did smell that there was a fire. Let's look at the next slide. So what are delusions? Now, hallucinations are different. Delusions are a false idea or belief. They actually believe this. This can sometimes come from misinterpreting a situation. They don't really understand it. Example could include a person with dementia thinking a family member is stealing from them or that the police is following them. For them, it's really, really very, very real. Now, a lot of caregivers tell me that that happens a lot, that the people they're caring for really feel that somebody is stealing something because they can't find it and they misplaced it, but that's part of their delusion. Next. Now, paranoia is interesting because paranoia is a kind of suspicious delusion. So they both are, they go together. For example, again, excusing a caregiver of being unfaithful. I hear a lot of that. And it's not easy to take. It's it's difficult when you're being accused of something. But remember one thing, it's going to be up to you how you respond to that accusation, because they are not going to change their mind. They very much believe that what's happening is real to them. So this session today really is all about you and how you need to respond and what you need to do, because they are not going to change. Next. Now, I do want to say that delusions are more common in dementia with Lewy bodies, all right, and can affect people with Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, particularly in the later stages. They are less common in people with frontal temporal dementia. That's why when I said to you, it is really important that you get a good diagnosis. It's not enough for a doctor to tell you that the person you're caring for has dementia. We know that they have dementia. but it's important to know why. So let's look a little bit about Lewy body dementia. What is it all about? It's not an Alzheimer's disease. It's really very, very different. And it's extremely difficult to diagnose. That's why it's important to go to the right place of having a really full psychosocial geriatric assessment where they can actually eliminate and identify what the person is going through. Now, medication and LBD can have adverse interactions. So if the person has been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, you have to really be very aware of all the medications that they're taking. Never, never buy anything over the counter without first asking the pharmacist and the doctor. Now, Parkinson's disease and Lewy body are very similar. That's why sometimes it's so hard to diagnose, because they have so many similarities. But if you have a good physician and you have a good team behind you, it will come out in the end to really be able to identify. Now, the other thing that makes Lewy body dementia different is that it affects sleep quality. All right. That's important to keep in mind. A lot of people with that condition can sleep all day, they're up all night, they can't sleep, they're restless, and it's hard to find a solution. So, like most dementias, Lewy body dementia is unpredictable. We know that this is unpredictable. I saw something in the chat, Minerva. I don't know if it's appropriate to read it now or to keep it for later.
It was only Maria saying hello to everybody and that she's with the aging services.
Well, that's really very nice. Thank you so much. All right. So, I do want to say, if we can go to, I want to repeat this again. Remember that dementia is the umbrella term that describes many kinds of dementia, including Alzheimer. Lewy body is just another type of dementia, and particularly affected. And now, Lewy body is really affected by hallucination, delusion, and paranoia. So if the person you're caring for has been diagnosed with Lewy body, keep in mind that they may hallucinate, they may become paranoid, they may accuse you of all kinds of things. All right. Now, before I go any further, I'm wondering, I just want to make sure that this is very clear for everybody. Are there any questions about hallucination, delirium, being delusional, paranoid?
Okay, everybody, you can either unmute yourself, raise your hand, or type it out in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to say it out. Louis, I see that you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes, this is very important. And I'm wondering, all of those things are happening in our household, unfortunately. And I have evolved over the last year or so as to how to handle it. And I still doubt that I'm handling it well. So, my question is, with each of these, all of which I have unfortunately experienced, is there an underlying way to handle it besides trying to remain calm?
Yes, and your question is just at the right time, because my next slide says, what do caregivers need to know and how to do it? So I hope that today I'm going to answer some of those questions for you. There are ways to handle it. It doesn't always work, but really give it a try. All right. So if we can move to the next and keep I'm going to continue. You can certainly, if I'm not answering your question, you definitely can ask again. Now, the most important thing that you can do as a caregiver, you need to assess the situation. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, so all of a sudden, everything was going well. All of a sudden, there's a delusion, there's a hallucination, they're getting upset, they're talking to someone, they're accusing you. It's important to remember that the hallucination and delusion may or may not be upsetting to the person living with the dementia. So what I mean by that, remember the letters that I was reading to you. Now, the mother who was talking to Joe was very happy. There was nothing going on. She was happy. It was the daughter who was getting upset. Okay? This is what I want you to understand. So when this happens, it's up to you to assess. Not all hallucinations are frightening, and not all delusions are paranoid in nature. Sometimes they may be the result of a person trying to make sense of things. For example, the person may not remember she might or him putting their wallet or their purse away, and concludes that it must have been stolen. So it's important for you to kind of really assess. You're the professional now. When helping someone who is experiencing hallucination or delusion, the best way to start is by arranging a consultation with the person's doctor. Okay, so let's say things were going well, and all of a sudden you're noticing all these things are popping up. It's very, very important to go and see the doctor. The doctor can look for physical causes, such as kidney or bladder infection, dehydration, pain, or alcohol drug abuse, all of which can cause hallucination and delusion. All right, so don't just take it for granted. They could have a medical problem. They could have, as I said, a urinary infection, which definitely can make a person hallucinate. Their cognitive behavior changes. It's also possible that the medication being prescribed for pain are the cause. So if a doctor prescribes a medication, watch for and report any side effects you notice, including oversedation, increased confusion, tremors, or tics. What I mean by tics is sometimes a person kind of they go like this with their elbow, or their eyes are opening, shutting, they're blinking all over the place. Now, again, even over-the-counter medication can cause someone to hallucinate, become paranoid, and to be delusional. So please, again, never buy anything over the counter without asking the pharmacist first. It may also be helpful to have the person eyesight or hearing checked at the time. Things change. Remember that I told you, even if they weren't, even if they didn't have a hearing aid, things are changing. Make sure to check that one out. It should be checked regularly. Make sure the person wears their hearing aid and glasses at all times. Now, so when you're assessing the situation, look at how is the person responding to the hallucination or delusion. Now, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's so important because it's hard to deal with it. If they don't cause problems for the person, it's typically best to ignore them. It's not important, it's also important to avoid arguing with the person about what he or she sees or hears or believes. Don't tell them that they're not seeing something. If it doesn't bother them, leave them be. It's also important to avoid arguments with the person about the situation. It's a natural reaction to try to correct the person, but unless the behavior becomes dangerous, you might not need to intervene. Leave them alone if they are not upset. Remember the mother, as I said before, she was talking to the neighbor and she was okay. It was the daughter that was really upset. Let's go to the next slide. We'll get a little bit into more details. What do caregivers need to do? All right, so you have a situation, you've assessed it, you know that the person is going through a difficult time. What do you need to do at that time and how to handle the situation? It's so important to reassure the person with kind words and a gentle touch. For example, you might want to say to the person, don't worry, I'm here, I'll protect you, I'll take care of you, or I know you're worried, would you like me to hold your hand and walk with you for a while? Sometimes even gentle patting may turn the person's attention towards you and reduce the symptom. Believe it or not, even calling out their name and saying, look into my eyes, it might just snap, they connect with you, and whatever they were seeing or hearing kind of disappears. Also, for no reason or feeling behind the hallucination or delusion, and try to find out what it means to the individual. For example, you might want to respond with, it sounds as if you're worried, or I know this is frightening for you. This way you are acknowledging the feeling and supporting them. You know, it takes a lot of patience, I have to tell you. I've experienced that myself, and I have to say that it took time, but it worked for me some of the time. So it's important to at least try it. Now, when I say use distraction or redirecting, and again, call the person by the name and make eye contact. Suggest that the person come with you on a walk or sit next to you in another room. So that what you're trying to do is kind of get them away from the feelings and what they're seeing at that moment. You know, frightening hallucination, delusion often subside when you take them to a different area. You might also try to turn the person's attention to a favorite activity. This does work, such as listening to music, drawing, looking at photo albums, whatever it takes. What I suggest and what I used to do is I was always had these activities handy so I don't have to run around looking for them. So have a box or a drawer when you can put some things on and say to the person you're caring for, come on, let's go and look at the pictures. Start talking and see if that really works. Now, one of the things that research tells us for sure is to respond honestly as much as you can. Keep in mind that the person may sometimes ask you about the hallucination or delusion. They may ask you, for example, if he or she asks, do you see him? You may want to answer with, I know that you see something, but I don't see it. This way, you're not denying what the person sees or hears, but you avoid getting involved in an argument. This is the whole thing. You're trying not to agitate them. You're trying not to argue with them. You're trying not to tell them that what they see is not there. This response also helps to normalize the person's experience. But I want to say to you that use this tip only if the person asks you for your opinion. If they're not asking for your opinion, don't go there. Now, the other thing is modify the environment. So what do I mean by modify the environment? If the person looks at a kitchen curtain and many times they could actually see a face, maybe you should remove that curtain. Turn on more lights to reduce shadows that could look frightening. For example, I know one caregiver told me that she didn't realize it, but there wasn't a lot of lighting in her room. And her husband would get very frightened and stop walking because for him, he saw a shadow and he didn't know who was there. And that became very frightening to him. And he started running back into the bedroom. So if the person insists that he or sees a strange person in the mirror, it's possible because they passed the mirror. It's possible the person doesn't recognize his or own reflection. So if it's really creating a problem, maybe you should take the mirror down. If the person has delusions about people stealing from them or her, have some duplication of the items. And many times you can actually ask them, come on, let's look together for that object. So try not to personalize it. So I've said an awful lot. I want to open for questions if any of you have questions about that. And let's talk a little bit about that. And maybe some of you have used these methods of trying to distract the individuals. Have they worked for you?
Okay, we do have some comments from earlier. Uh, J JC wants to know, does Seroquel help? Can it be stopped at any time in the future?
Look, no medication should ever be stopped without asking a doctor, okay? Medications are very, very, throughout, people live longer, obviously, because there are medications, but there's always, always side effects. So whatever medication, whether it's over the counter or prescription medication, should never be started without the doctor knowing about it and should never be stopped without the doctor and the pharmacist knowing about it.
Uh, Maxine wanted to know, what is the difference between delusion and hallucination?
All right. So we said that delusions, if we can we go back to the slides just to sort of, by the way, you will receive all these slides if you have registered with us. So let's go back a little bit and go over it again. Okay. So hallucination is a false sensory perception. When they're hallucination, they're actually seeing, they're hearing, they're smelling, they're tasting or feeling something that is not there. All right. Just like the caregiver who said that the mother saw the cat sitting on the couch and she was very, very upset. So that's what is hallucination. Let's go to delusion now. Now, delusion is a belief. They really believe that that you are having an affair with the next door neighbor. They really believe that someone is stealing from them. They really believe that there's nothing wrong with them. Okay, that's a delusion. It's not something that they necessarily see or necessarily feel, but it's a belief that they have. I hope that's clear.
Definitely. And
And if
Tamara
we,
just
yes, go ahead. Yes.
Tamara just put, my husband asks me the name of the guy over there or who the other girl is. When I say I don't know, he says, how could you not know him?
Well, because in your husband's mind, he believes that you know that person. So when, you always want to be truthful and honest with people, right? But remember at the beginning, I said to you, it's going to be up to you to how you respond to a situation. So if somebody would say, well, how do you not know them? You don't want to lie, obviously, but sometimes a little white lie does help a situation. You could say, you're right, I forgot. And you can sort of name them. As long it depends on the circumstance. It depends of whether you're in you know, meeting with these people or not, but you have to use discretion. What you want to try and do is not agitate the situation and keep it as calm as possible.
I had a question. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Yeah. My question is, my name is Dundee Frank from West Holland, Arkansas, and my question is the patient aware that they have a problem or something's not right, or because my father, when he had dementia, he would say, "I don't feel right. Something ain't right. Something is wrong." It is in their minds. Can they convey that something's not right?
In the early stages, I think most people recognize it. Sometimes even like I might think of something, I can't remember that word, okay? So in the beginning, I think people do, but there's tremendous denial later on. A lot of people with dementia truly believe that there's nothing wrong with them, that there really is nothing wrong with them. It's not that they're being difficult. And sometimes in the beginning they do. They realize that, I've forgotten what, they pick up the fork and they don't know what the word is. Or we all, as we age, many times we do forget things. So it's important to write things down. So yes, there is tremendous denial. But you know what? Caregivers are also in denial because people with dementia have good days and bad days. And sometimes they say, well, he remembered what happened 20 years ago, what's going on here? So that anger can escalate for you as well because of those different situations where there are good days and bad days. But
Yes, ma'am.
they do forget and they do deny and they do feel that there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. It's everybody else.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so if there's no other questions, maybe we can go, I think we left off at slide 16. Did we do this one? Reassurance. No. Okay, tips how to respond. Now, encourage them to talk through their thoughts. It may reveal what is behind their delusion. For example, if they don't believe their home is their home, it may be due to a recent change in furnishing. You may change around the furnitures and it's okay with you, but they don't realize, they don't think they're at home. Or unfamiliar people are coming into your home, such as maybe you hired somebody, or maybe there is a delivery, or maybe there's a renovation. So it's really important to really ask them, why do you think that this is not your home? And explain to them, you know what, you're right, I did change the couch. So at least you're encouraging them to talk, and you talk through it with them. Now, the other thing that's also important for all of us, when we're stressed, it's important that people acknowledge our stress, right? And how they must be feeling. Dismissing their concerns or trying to distract them without acknowledging their concerns first can cause, the situation to escalate and cause them to lose trust in you. For example, if the person thinks that you or someone else is stealing from them, listen to them. Don't become defensive and say, what do you mean? I wouldn't steal anything from you. Just acknowledge how they must be feeling and suggest supporting them to find the missing object. Gently suggest another, again, you can switch and do another activity. But before you do that, acknowledge what's happening to them. And by validating that. Now, try to gently offer an alternative explanation for what may have happened and present this as a possibility alongside their delusion rather than opposing their views. What I mean by that is don't tell them that they don't know what they're talking about. I know it's frustrating. I know it's not easy, but it's really very important. Now, reassure them that their concerns are being taken seriously. And you should. You could say, well, I'm sure it's really upsetting you that your wallet is missing, but we're going to go look for it. And we're going to make sure that we find it, and try your best to have those extra things, like know where their wallet is so that you can go and show them, here is your wallet. Now, if the delusion is ongoing and causing significant problems, try ways to avoid further distress. For example, if they believe that their friend is bringing over poisoned food and, this is causing them a tremendous stress, well, you should stop. I mean, it might be very helpful that the friend is bringing in food, but if the person that you're caring for really believes that all this food that's coming in is poisonous and they're not eating, then you have to stop it and find other ways of dealing with that. But most important, don't take it personally. It's not easy at all, it's hard. Now, modify your environment. What I mean by that, if the person, again, as I said, situations have changed in the house, it's really, really important to be able to modify your environment. Remember, even when I say modify the environment, make sure that there's no scattered rugs around that they could slip on, cords that are hanging, electrical cords, just easy access, that there's less and less cluttered. Let's go to the next slide. Now, the other thing is that research tells us that non-medical intervention are the best. So what do I mean by that? All the things that I've been talking to you about, that's really important to use. While non-drug interventions are often effective, medications can be definitely can be helpful. Now, one of the things is that, while non-drug interventions, that I'd like you to try that first, but if the symptoms really are escalating and it's not working, you may also want to ask the doctor to evaluate the person to determine if the medications needs to be added or adjusted to reduce the hallucination and delusion. Now, always tell, it's very important to tell the doctor everything that's going on. If the person has a history of serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia, the hallucination or the delusion may be related to that illness and it's really escalating. It's important to work closely with the person's doctor to help determine an appropriate course of action. Now, sometimes medications are the only thing that can really calm them down. I know a lot of us don't want to have extra medication, but if you cannot control the situation, that might be something that you would want to do. Next, please. Now, I went through all that, how to respond to support your loved one when they're experiencing the delusions. We talked about encouraging them to talk through it, acknowledge their distress, try to gentle offer alternative, reassure them that their concerns are being taken seriously, and most importantly, don't take it personally. Next one. So how do you deal with accusations? I think one of the most important thing, as I said, don't take it personally. Don't argue.
How can you not take it personally if it's about you?
You know what? That's a very good question. I'm really glad that you asked it at this point, because you're not dealing with someone that is using all their faculties. That person, you cannot blame that person. It's the disease that is.
No, that's not the question. The question, I understand that, but what happens if they don't know you? They don't, this is what happens. Who are you? Why are you here? Where is my wife? Why can't I go home?
That's very, very hard to deal with. That's the person must
I
be.
know.
Yes. When I say don't take it personally, I meant more don't take it personally that you're being accused. What you're saying is something totally different.
Mhm.
That is very, very hard to deal with. And I think what you have to do in cases like that, you really have to reassure the person that you are their wife, telling them that your name again. And sometimes, there's no quick formula to anything like that. Is this what you're going through?
Yes.
So how are you handling it?
Several ways to do exactly what you said: reassure, point out features, look at things together, look at the wedding album, look at pictures of the children, those kinds of things. There are times when I've had to leave the house and come in another way and say, I'm home.
Wow. You I think that's an amazing way to handle it. So you kind of finding your ways. This is such a difficult process to go through. And I think the hardest thing is when the person you're caring for no longer even recognizes who you are.
Now, this is not all the time, but it
Yes,
does happen
yes.
periodically. Yeah.
So it seems that you sort of have all the tools at hand. And what I would suggest for you, maybe you've done it already. I think you need to go see somebody, to talk to someone, to talk to them about, you've lived with this person for so long, and for them to not recognize you must be a tremendous loss.
Mhm.
And,
It's hard. It's hard.
it's hard. It's one of the things that I was the most fearful with my mother. As long as she recognized me, I didn't care what she called me. She called me sometimes by my daughter's names.
Mhm.
But that's so. Anyways, I feel for you and anyone else that's going through that. But I think that you're finding the right, and thank you for that, because I'm sure you've helped other caregivers.
I hope so. It's something that has to be addressed, and you rarely hear about it. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I see someone with their little hand up with a blue dress.
Mhm.
Go
Are
ahead,
you?
Elizabeth.
Hi, yes. I wanted to say that I'm glad to listen to your webinar today, because I know my mom, she's got advanced dementia now, and she went through this stage and of where she was misplacing things herself, and then she couldn't. She had. It's not that she couldn't remember. It's like her memory was erased, and I think that's what everyone might like to know. And I think about it, it's not that someone's forgetting it. It's just that the connections in their brain really are not there anymore. I noticed that and that's why this period seems to be so hard when they're really on their way, transitioning to a more advanced stage, is that they literally do not have any. I think it's a profound absence of memory I've found with her, and that leads to these things of like, well, she called me up, you must have taken my accounting book, or my financial data. And I was like, and one thing I found that helped is like, Mom, before you continue or we do this, I want you, I know it's there, please search all the cupboards and then let's talk. And that helped.
Excellent. Yeah.
Read or of course it was found in the last room she looked at, which was her bedroom, where she should have started, of course. I was just going to say too, I think, when the situations we just heard about, where it's really hard, like when the father doesn't remember like who you are and things like that. Luckily I haven't gotten to that point with my mom, but I think what really helped me is when someone said that, you just need to just try to enjoy whatever time you have left with or you sort of have to accept that you have a new person now. I think when we get upset, and this happened in the early days, it's because like you're holding on to the old mom and you're expecting the old mom, the prior person, to be there, and like, Mom, this is not how you are, and you need to just accept, like, yes, this is no longer, but we are in a new place. And I think life has gotten so much better when accepted. I'm just going to accept her for who she is, and we're going to go walk, and she doesn't, it's
We're having a bit of a
like you said,
difficult hearing you. Yeah.
it's not working the way it was.
You made a very, very good point. We do
So
assess
I'll stop there.
I'm sorry? Dr. Sklar and I do a session. One of the most important things in the caregiving journey is acceptance. It's so important to accept. Now, the caregiving journey, nothing stays the same ever. Things can go along for weeks and months and even years sometimes, and then things change because it's a progressive disease. Dementia and all the umbrella diseases underneath that they're progressive. So you have to really, really accept the fact that things will change, sometimes for the better, because person's personality may change and they become very cooperative where in the past they weren't. It doesn't always have to be the worst part scenario, but accept it. Accept them for who they are at that moment. And very much what you said, Elizabeth, enjoy the times that you have. My most memorable moments with my mother was when I used to do her nails. They were, she chose the colors, I did her nails, we talked about things in the past, and those were moments that I treasure.
I can just add then to the one kind of silver lining on like what we've just been talking about with the accusations and saying like, who are you? I've noticed that it may take a year, possibly, or longer, but it doesn't stay the rest of their life. My mom no longer accuses anyone of stealing. She's no longer hallucinating that someone's in the attic popping down to steal stuff. Luckily, that was kind of a transient. It's like this whole progress from going from who they were, and as they're descending into dementia, it's a scary, rough journey for them, but it seems like we've now hit a plateau, and is having help from the doctor with like her depression, and they have new dementia medicines now. She's luckily at a more peaceful and happier stage, and I feel so much better now. Hopefully that's a ray of hope for anyone going through hard times right now, and that declining.
Wow.
No,
No, thank you so much
explanation.
for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just looking at the time. We do have a little bit more time, but I want to go to the slide 18 just to talk about this for a moment. Now, again, I just want to go through this, that prevention is key. No, the one before, the prevention is key. Now, if something changes at all and things change, whether their behavior, whatever, make an appointment with the doctor. Now, if the behavior happens frequently, there could be a trigger that's not obvious. Remember, you really need to understand. It's important to figure out what could be causing or triggering the behavior. One of the things that caregivers are the ones who told me, keep notes or keep a dementia journal. This may help you discover certain patterns or triggers, such as this certain behavior happens at certain times of the day, before or after meals, related to a physical or emotional need. They might need to go to the bathroom. They have pain, they're tired, they're scared, they're angry, they're anxious. Also a change in the daily routine. But the other thing that I want to say, it's very important to keep in mind that you are not alone in this. So thank you for all of you who are sharing. Many caregivers are going through the same difficult situation. There are a lot of resources in the community to support you and to help you cope. Now, caregiving in general is very stressful. However, if the person displays behaviors of hallucination, delusion, or paranoid behavior, it is overwhelming. It's important to let family members and close friends know what you are going through, so they don't judge you or the person you are caring for. Now, if the behavior is not managed by distraction or redirection or medication, and their behavior escalates both verbally and physically, you need to put a plan in place. What I mean by that is to ask family members or trusted friends if they would be available to come over once you call them that you're having a difficult time. Now, I know this is a worst case scenario. You might have to call 911 if they're really physically, verbally abusing you.
Look at this.
But you need to protect yourself as well as the person you are caring for. So having said all that, there are a lot of resources in the community. You're not alone. Get the help that you need. Now, I think we have time for maybe one more question. These are references that you can go to. And when you get the slides, you can just click on the blue parts and you will have all the information that you need. Are there any more questions? Oh, I see some faces. So if there aren't any questions, I know that Minerva has some information she would like to share with you.
Yes. Thank you, Lucy. This was a great presentation. And like Lucy said, I will be sending out the PowerPoint presentation to you later on today with some additional resources. It'll also include the link to this recording. So if you want to go back to it and listen to it as well, you'll be able to do that at that time. I'm going to go ahead and
Ask one question.
yes, ma'am.
I do
Go
have
ahead.
a question. I just couldn't find the place to put my hand up or anything. My husband is quite cognizant much of the time, but he definitely has some delusions, hallucinations. And I suspect he has the Lewy body because he's had Parkinson's for some years. I am torn about saying to him, you have dementia. And I wonder, I just hate to use the D word with him. And I oftentimes will say something like, well, we knew that this was part of the progression of Parkinson's. But I just wonder, is there a way to let them know that they do have dementia?
Well, that's a really, really good question to ask. And I think the question should be, what do you want to accomplish by telling him that? Why is
don't
it
know.
why is it important for you to tell him?
It may be that the key to it right there, maybe it is unimportant. So maybe what I'm saying is good enough to let him know that it's just simply the progression of Parkinson's, and I know that's part of it.
Exactly.
You
Because
also,
who wanted to say something?
that was me, but it's okay. You can continue,
I
Lucy.
have something. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've been trying to get in here and I finally did, but I do have a comment and to see what your opinion is about this. My mom has dementia, of course, and she's always in her closet and I go back there, she may have changed clothes or whatever. And then my sister, she'll say, well, we might need to put a lock on the closet. And I'm saying, no, we're not putting a lock on the closet to keep her out of there. Is it okay to just let her do, long as she's not hurting anything, and may just kind of watch her?
Is she happy doing it?
Yeah.
Well, so what's the problem? The only
Okay.
problem is putting her clothes back in the closet, possibly.
That's what I tell my sister.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
that's what I tell my sister. It's not a problem. It's not a problem.
well, you can tell her that Lucy Barylak agrees with you as well. I had a similar thing with my mother loved clothes. She loved clothes. She loved,
Yes,
always was a
yes,
good dresser. She loved makeup, shoes,
yes,
and she was in her cupboard a lot. So what?
yeah,
Made her happy. And so,
yes.
so I think we always have to ask ourselves, and thank you so much for your question,
So,
Maxine,
Phyllis,
because you have to ask yourself, like, why is it important? Remember the beginning of my discussion, I said, if it doesn't bother them, like the mother who was talking to Joe, the neighbor, she was happy having a discussion with Joe, the neighbor. It was the
right.
daughter who was upset with it. Leave them alone. They're allowed to live their lives the way they want to live, as long as they're not making themselves unhappy or are a danger to themselves or to you. So you're absolutely right, Phyllis. Tell your sister, leave your mom alone.
Thank you so
And
much.
something I wanted to add for Maxine. I know Tam's touched on this a couple of times during her presentation. Even if you try to explain it to them, you have to understand their brain is not there. Every day or every year, it loses some of the weight. So the connections won't be there for them to understand what it is you're telling them. So sometimes, like you've done, it just tell them what they already know or what they comprehend already, but don't try to be more specific as far as,
Yeah.
well, it's because you have this and you're missing this and you got this. They don't understand that. And keep in mind, with dementia, it's more of a regression. So when they're 60, 70, in their mind, they might be in their teens or 20s. So you also have helps to go to that time period. And that also happens when they don't recognize you. They'll start calling you their mom because you'll remind them of their mom when they don't remind you of the wife. But then again, at the same time, if they're in their teens, they're not married at that time.
All
So
these things, that's a very good point. All these things can happen. And as a caregiver, remember what I said, they're not going to change. You can change the behavior for them by recognizing, assessing the situation first and foremost. They're not doing any harm. They're happy. Leave them alone. Distract them. If they're really agitated, distract them as best as you can. Do an activity for them. Take them out of the room. Remember what I also say. Noise. Maybe there's a noise from outside that you're hearing. Somebody's doing construction and you don't even realize that that triggered for them. Lighting. Make sure your lighting is good in the house. all these things. Now, remember one thing, it's a progression. The journey of caregiving has its ups and downs, okay? You have to have acceptance. Acceptance, enjoy them for who they are today. Now, I'm looking at the
Yes.
time, and I know that it's time for us to say goodbye. But if it's okay with Minerva, I don't mind staying a few minutes longer if somebody else has a question. I'll take one more question.
I am fine with staying on. I have the poll going right now, so please go ahead and fill that. That is how we know if what we're presenting to you is beneficial, if you do like it. And this is how we will know also if you have any suggestions of any topics in the future that you would like for us to cover. So please fill that out. And does anyone else have, Carolyn, were you trying to say something? We can't hear you. Doris, is that you?
Well, Your Honor, I did not go because since me and him have been together, his mom.
I can't hear anything. I think somebody has their mic unmuted. All right, so with that, okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. And I just want to give you all the credit in the world. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. And take care of yourself, please. Do something really special for yourself every single day, whether it's going for a walk, nice bubble bath, whatever it is that makes you feel good. So Minerva, I'll leave it up to you. Closing words.
Yes, I want to say thank you, Lucy, for this great presentation. You always talk about something new in all these sessions. I do want to remind everyone of our upcoming class. We have Dr. Barylak coming on next on the 16th with Understanding Dementia. I'm sorry, I need my glasses. Understanding Dementia with Dr. Barylak on the 16th. And then on the 17th, we're going to have When Decisions Are Left Undecided with Jess Amby and Amelia Card. And that will be on July 17th. And with that, thank you everyone for participating. Thank you all for all you do. It's all about what you do for them.
Thanks again. And Phyllis, let her have fun in that cupboard.
And for all you know, maybe when she was younger, she liked playing in the closet with her mom's clothes, and that could be it. For all you know.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.